Hello everyone, my name is Ravesa Demneri, and today I will be presenting my research on the relationship between geothermal energy and indigenous communities, specifically framed as On Stolen Land, a comparative analysis of geothermal energy growth in relation to indigenous communities in Kenya and Canada. How often do you think about our Earth's climate? Climate change is one of the most pressing problems of our society, but how do we actually address it? How can we, in order to limit it, reach a 45% reduction on greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, a deadline that's only 5 years away? To do so, every possibility of sustainable energy production must be considered, so that it can be used to substitute greenhouse gases. One such possibility is geothermal energy, with one of its main advantages being reliability over time, as a 24/7 source of energy. While geothermal energy has a temporal and developmental benefit, it has a considerable disadvantage, requiring large amounts of land in order for geothermal plants to be constructed. Often, this results in the land's inhabitants, such as indigenous communities, being targeted and forced into displacement. Such a situation has happened in Kenya, particularly in the Olkaria area, where the Maasai community have been coerced into resettlement. The relocation has endangered the pastoral community's livelihoods and has led to marginalization, social disconnection, and risk of life. On the other hand, 2Decade Geothermal, based in Fort Nelson, British Columbia, is the first indigenous-owned geothermal energy project in Canada and is expected to start commercial operations in 2026 and will contribute to food security through agricultural and greenhouse development for the entire British Columbia community. Utilizing a comparative approach, this study will analyze how a geothermal plant came into creation, the factors that led to displacement in Kenya and cooperation in Canada, and the differences and similarities between the respective indigenous communities and the governments. The research will begin with qualitative research focused on analyzing documents of national and international policies, environmental regulations, and land laws. Of primary interest is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Applying this policy and this emphasis on the indigenous rights of the environment will let us assess whether a breach of rights has happened in Kenya and how to proceed in accordance with international procedures. Secondly, this study will reach out to members of the TDK project and ask them about their experiences while incorporating ethical principles and measures of the use of human subjects in research. A primary person of interest is Taylor Ben Tsakoza, community liaison of TDK. Concurrently, the project will use indigenous methodologies and governance protocols to examine stewardship and agency. These conversations will highlight how to emphasize community relations and future steps that can be taken in Kenya to confront the injustice faced by the Maasai community. Lastly, this study will utilize quantitative methodology through running inferential tests such as ANCOVA to determine whether there exists a statistical significance between the relocation of indigenous communities and livelihood measures, considering covariates such as gender, ethnicity, and class, and using data such as number of geothermal plants, land use outcomes, and economic growth. The statistical significance will let us measure whether relocation harms indigenous communities. With regards to the future, through the lens of Canada and the 2Decade Geothermal, this project evaluates whether a similar approach can be followed in Kenya and whether a system of growth can be instilled that represents and respects indigenous communities. Thank you.